Alright, I am back with another video, and today I am doing a build request. I was asked to build Link from the Legend of Zelda by a couple of different people, and today I have decided to do just that. Now, this isn't Link from any specific game. I kind of wanted to go about this with the idea that this is Link if he was in a new Zelda game that was called The Legend of Zelda Baldur's Gate, something along those lines. So while we have a lot of things that are the generic kind of basic kit and kind of the themes of Link present here, for example, you know, like the hair and the clothing here, this isn't specifically trying to recreate any specific version of Link, such as Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, anything like that. I have just taken design elements and kind of concepts from all over the series and tried to replicate his basic gameplay that is present across all of the games. So things like sword and shield combat, you know, like, and his like spin attack, for example, and just a few extra bits and pieces here. Now, some of you might be getting a slight sense of deja vu, like, wait a minute, haven't we done this before? And you would technically be right, but in order to not bloat the intro to this video, I would ask for everyone who watches this video to stick around to the end, because there is quite an important discussion we need to have about how this channel is going to go forward, specifically when it comes to the comments section. But as ominous as that is, let's just move on and get into the build. So, we are going to be starting off as a ranger. A lot of Link's abilities are tied to the ranger class, and there is a lot of things that are on theme for the character, so this is the class that makes the most sense from a gameplay perspective if we are just trying to capture Link's gameplay. I originally thought that maybe Oathbreaker Paladin would have been a good shake, because you get a lot of things related to courage, and you can kind of make it feel like you really are wielding the Master Sword, where you have like a legendary weapon that does like holy damage because it is like the Blade of Evil's Bane, but I think a lot of people rightly pointed out that Ranger is the best way to go to actually get Link's kit outside of just the Master Sword, and that is perfectly fair and a valid criticism, so I wanted to go with this here. So to start off, we're going to get Favoured Enemy, and I want to get Sanctified Stalker here for the Sacred Flame cantrip. I want to flavour this a bit like Link's, you know how when the Master Sword is at full HP and you swing it, it can fire those blade beams? This is kind of what I want to... how I want to grab that feature, even though it's not quite the same, but it's a decent cantrip that will scale up with our levels and does a decent chunk of radiant damage, so we might as well grab it here. We're also going to get Religion Proficiency, I believe, with this as well. Yes. And as for Natural Explorer, I absolutely want to grab Find Familiar from Beast Tamer so that we can have our little companion that Link gets in most of his games. So like your Navis, your Fis, your Midnas. This is basically our way of kind of doing that in a interesting way that works for Baldur's Gate. Obviously not the most powerful option. If you don't care about that so much, take whatever you like here, but I just quite like this for the theming. As for our ability scores, our wisdom, we want around... our spellcasting isn't the most important thing, so I'd say a 14 for our wisdom is perfectly acceptable. Putting it like that. And I would say our dexterity is absolutely going to want to be our primary stat. But again, we're using a longsword, so if you use a finesse longsword, which does exist in the game, you could get a lot of mileage out of going with, you know... maybe kind of going with your maximum dexterity. And one of the weapons I am going to suggest for this build is is like Fowler Alluve, which is a dex longsword. However, we do upgrade to a strength-based longsword later on, and you can also pick up the Gloves of Dexterity, which I'm going to be using for this build. So I'm going to say our final dexterity is going to be around 10, but in the early game you might want to have this a bit higher. So yeah, we're going to grab a bunch of Constitution, a bunch of Strength, and since we are a mainly Strength-focused build, if we put our Strength to 17, or I guess if you don't want to use Ethel's Boon, then basically put it to 17 if you don't mind using Ethel's Boon, allowing your Strength to boost up to 20 with Ethel's Boon and the Potion of Everlasting Vigor. Or just go with the Potion of Everlasting Vigor and take it up to 16. And I would actually say we could probably bump Wisdom. Nah, we'll bump actually one of our soft stats. We'll bump Intelligence here, just so we have that little bit of int, and we'll keep Charisma at its base level because Link doesn't talk. So, to summarize all my scattered thoughts, Strength 16, pushing it to 18 with the Potion of Vigor, Dexterity at 10 because we're going to be using the Gloves of Dexterity to push that to an 18, 16 in Constitution for tankiness, 10 in Intelligence because Link is intelligent, and Wisdom at 14 for our Ranger abilities. As for our proficiencies, take whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. Animal handling makes a ton of sense for Link, because he obviously rides a horse everywhere and is very familiar with lots of animals, and it's a common theme across a lot of the games. He is good with animals. Perception is also really good, because Link would be a very perceptive person. We also have stealth, athletics, and survival because of my because we get it from our race and our background here. So, because we got the Outlander background, which I think makes sense for Link, even though this is just a carryover from a previous profile. And then finally, either nature or investigation does work. I mean, insight can also work, and we already have that, you know, quite high, so yeah, we'll go with insight. Next up, at Ranger level 2, we're going to be getting a fighting style, and obviously, while Link does use a bow in this build and across the games, archery would work. I want to take dueling here to get that additional 2 damage to our weapon, because we are using a long sword with only one hand, because we are wearing a shield, that means we're losing out on that d10 damage die, but with dueling, you can add the 2 damage, because versatile weapons do work as long as you have a shield in the offhand with this feature, meaning that you can get an extra 2 additional damage with any of our longsword attacks, so it's almost as if we never actually dropped down a damage die, so I think that works. We're also going to get 2 spells, and this is entirely up to you for what you want to pick. I quite like grabbing a Long Strider because it's going to give us extra movement speed, and Enhanced Leap because Link can be quite athletic. However, obviously any of these will work, and we will be able to get more of them. Next up at Ranger level 3, we're going to be picking our subclass, and obviously we are going with the Hunter subclass. This is going to give us a Hunter's Prey feature, which is going to give us Colossus Slayer, allowing once per turn, one of our weapon attacks will deal an extra 1d8 if the target is below hit point maximum. Basically, we're hitting the giant glowing eyeball on the boss to make it, to hit its weak spot. I think this is a really cool feature, but we mainly want to play Hunter for some features we're going to be getting later on, but it's super important to Link. We're also going to get another spell, and I would say Hunter's Mark, Hail of Thorns, any of these can be really good, even Animal Friendship if you want to play more into that, like, you know, Link is good with animals aspects. Ensnaring Strike, well, less on theme will definitely work. I'm going to go with Hunter's Mark for now, just because it is quite a powerful spell, and we're not concentrating on anything at the moment, so it's worth picking up. Next up at Ranger level 4, we're going to be getting our first feat, and I would say an ability score improvement is going to be appropriate here. Now, what we can do, because we're using strength-based weapons, such as long swords, and if we use the Potion of Everlasting Vigor, by pushing our strength up to 18 here, we're already going to have it at 20. Now, a lot of people tell me to, oh, instead of leveling strength, just use Elixirs of Hill Giant Strength and all that sort of thing to bump your strength up using items. I don't like using items for my builds. While it's a bit different than D&D where you can guarantee what items you get in any given playthrough of Baldur's Gate, I like my builds to stand on their own without them, but of course this is where you guys can build the build your way, dump strength, and use those potions to boost yourself up. However, I quite like being able to just rely on my raw stats alone, rather than having to work with items, but again, that is up to you, play how you would like. Next up with Ranger level 5, we're going to be getting extra attack and a few extra spell slots, and also level 2 spells. Now, nothing at level 2 really speaks to me for Link, so we're going to be grabbing Hail of Thorns at this level, giving us a unique bow attack to use, which is quite nice. Next up at Ranger level 6, we're going to be getting another dosage of Favoured Enemy and Natural Explorer. For Favoured Enemy, you can pick whatever you like. If you want to use heavy armor with Link, you can go with the Ranger Knight, which may work, although I've gone for kind of light armor here. You can go for Mage Breaker if you want the worst cantrip in the game. However, I am making a build based on True Strike. Stay tuned for that. Keeper of the Veil if you want to get protection from evil and good to get that little bit of Triforce of Courage protection, or Bounty Hunter if you want to use Ensnaring Strike, but I'm personally going to be grabbing Keeper of the Veil here. And also we get another Natural Explorer, so you can use Urban Tracker to gain sleight of hand, but I think I'm going to just go with some resistance. I think Link cooks and eats so much weird crap in Breath of the Wild that Wasteland Wanderer Poison to give us poison resistance works pretty well thematically here. Next up at Ranger level 7, we're going to be getting a new passive. We get our defensive tactics, and of course for Link we have to go with Steel Will. Your unshakable resolve grants you advantage on saving throws against being frightened. This is literally the Triforce of Courage, making Link a strong and stalwart hero who never backs down. In my original vision for this build, I also saw the level 10 Devotion Paladin feature, the Aura of Courage, which makes you immune to Frightened, doing this for us. However, this works just as well overall. Now, we do get another spell at this level, and like I say, you can really take whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. I would suggest Speak with Animals as our overall utility spell, because yes, even though Link is a silent protagonist, we do still have to talk in this game, although we might leave that to someone else once we get to the next build that's in this video. So overall, we have a few options here. Spike Growth can work, Silence can work. In fact, you know what? Let's pick Silence, because we are a silent protagonist. Doesn't affect us. We don't speak anyway. Now at Ranger level 8, we're going to be getting another feat. Now, this is entirely up to you what you want to go with. At this point, we have our main ability score at 20, which is perfectly fine, using the Potion of Everlasting Vigor, so bumping up your Constitution to 18 obviously works here. However, there are a few other options. You can go with something like Sentinel, if you wanted to kind of play into that Protector of the Princess kind of angle, if we're going for like Breath of the Wild Royal Guard type Link. There's also something like Tavern Brawler, which may seem a bit odd as a choice for this build. However, Link does throw a lot of things, so if you want to maybe start throwing objects like bombs or pots to get the rupees inside, but also throw them at enemies for damage, that could also work. You could go for the, Savage Attacker, if you wanted to re-roll low damage rolls on your weapon attacks. Resilient, if you want to get something there. Martial Adept, if you want some, Battlemaster Fighter features. There's a ton of options here. You can go with Lucky, if you want to really feel that protagonist power and kind of get those luck points. There's a ton of different things you can do here. This build is super customizable. You can also go with something like Sharpshooter as well. Since we're using a bow, this might be worth it for the extra damage, although I feel like that would kind of make our bow damage overtake our sword and board damage, which is not really what I'm going for with this build. So to keep it simple, I'm going to bump up our Constitution, but this is what I'm trying to get across is that this is not a necessary thing to do. You can absolutely go with anything else, or you can even bump up your wisdom if you want higher spell save DCs. However, with our spells as we currently have, there's not really many that use DCs other than Hail of Thorns, so this isn't a huge deal in my opinion if you wanted to keep your wisdom a bit on the lower end. After all, wisdom is more Zelda's thing, so I'm just going to bump up our Constitution here, but my main point here is that this build is highly customizable, and honestly, leave your suggestions in the comments below for what you think good feats could be for this build. Next up at Ranger level 9, we're going to be getting some more spells, including our level 3 spells, and there are some pretty obvious choices from the level 3 lineup. There's Conjure Barrage, allowing you to have a unique and special weapon attack, or Lightning Arrow, which would be the closest thing we can kind of get to super-powered arrows, such as the fire, ice, or even light arrows, so pick whatever you like here. We're going to be able to get both as we level up, so I'm going to go with Conjure Barrage first for that unique weapon attack. Next up at Ranger level 10, we are going to get a few interesting features. First of all, Hide in Plain Sight. Camouflage yourself in the environment to become invisible and gain a plus 10 bonus to stealth checks as long as you stand still. This lasts until a long rest, and you cast this as an action, but I don't believe it uses any resources, so you can do it as much as you like, if I'm not mistaken. This is kind of a meh ability. You can get a slightly worse version of it as a level 2 Warlock. However, this is still okay to have for free, I guess, but it's not really a 10 levels in a single subclass kind of good feature, if you catch my meaning. We're also going to get another favoured enemy. I'm going to go Ranger Knight, so you have that option of heavy armour. And for our Wasteland Wanderer, Fire Resistance, Urban Tracker, it really doesn't matter, take whatever you like. I'll go with Fire Resistance. This is the most common thing, the most common, like, spell damage in D&D. Next up at Ranger level 11, we're going to get our final feature from the Hunter subclass, and this is what we're here for. We get Volley and the Whirlwind attack. The Whirlwind attack strikes out at all nearby foes, making separate attack rolls against each target. This is literally Link's spin attack, and this was one of the big things I was missing with my initial concept for this build. We also get Volley, which is kind of like the arrow version of it, which is kind of cool. So we get Link's iconic spin attack and a new kind of bow spinning attack, which is quite fun. And again, we're going to be taking Lightning Arrow here to get that big range damage spell option. At Ranger level 12, we're going to be getting our final feat, and again, as I've kind of said, you can really pick whatever you like here, it honestly doesn't matter. I might just grab an ability score improvement to bump up our wisdom, just so our spellcasting is a little bit better, but again, with our spell choices, it's not the biggest deal. However, having high wisdom for our skill proficiencies isn't exactly a bad thing, but if you don't really agree with this, go with Constitution or literally any feat. Actually, you know what, I'm going to take the Lucky feat, just because I think it kind of works for Link. That kind of protagonist's luck, like for divine intervention working for him. The Triforce. Oh, well, I guess it's not really a spoiler, but there she is. So yeah, that is the build. So with that, we're getting all of Link's basic kit. We're getting decent weapon damage, decent range damage, a ton of different attacking options, including the classic Whirlwind attack. So overall, we have quite a decent way of doing different damage options while still staying on theme for Link. But again, just going 12 levels in a single class isn't that interesting. Anybody could technically build a Link build by just going for 12 levels in a single class. So let's get into the equipment options and why I kind of went with what I did to again try and capture the kind of design of Link as best I could. So, if I just move the shield and the sword out of the way for a second, we can kind of see the outfit. And as you can see, I've gone for kind of, this is all the, like the sage green dye and kind of like the muddy red dye for the gloves and boots, with the sage green dye on the armor to kind of give that green iconic Link feel. And again, with kind of the blonde brownish hair tied back, kind of in the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom type of look. Again, kind of just combining various different Link designs to kind of make what we have here. Like I said, this isn't trying to like make him look exactly like one version of Link, but really just taking design inspiration from a bunch of different versions. But with that, let's get into the equipment. First of all, we have the Marksmanship hat. Because we are using a ranged weapon, getting a +1 bonus to those ranged attack rolls, it could be super good, but also thrown attack rolls as well. So if you're going for that whole Tavern Brawler strategy where you're able to throw bombs and other items like pots and crates and such, this would also work for that, but honestly, it's entirely up to you. Basically, you can pick this up really easily in Act 2, but if you wanted to switch to something like the Helm of Baldur, the Mask of Soul Perception, any of those super powerful Act 3 items, it's not going to affect this build at all, so go with whatever you like, but this is just a pretty decent option to grab in Act 2. Now next up, we have the Padded Armour +1. In my opinion, fashion-wise, this is one of the better ways to kind of get a Link outfit. It works the best with dyes to get that overall colour, and is one of the more kind of like better light armor sets in the game in my opinion, but obviously the caveat is it is quite weak in the later game, even though we have a shield which can give us a buff to our AC to make it a decent level, as well as getting a buff to our AC from the evasive shoes and the gloves of dexterity overall because of our higher dexterity. You can see the kind of calculations here. It's not perfect. Fashion wise, I believe it's spot on the money, but I feel like I need to show some other options as well. We can also go up to the Padded Armour +2, giving us an extra little bit of AC, and it does still kind of work with the green, but obviously this is much less Link-esque, and so I don't quite like it as much as the Padded Armour +1, but it could definitely work if you don't mind for kind of different fashion. And finally, if you really need that strong Act 3 option, I cannot recommend anything more than the Elegant Studded Leather. Now you may think, why am I not wearing medium armor? Because this cat build can do that. Honestly, there's not a lot of medium armor that really looks good for a Link build, and technically because our dexterity is so high that we basically get the same amount of AC or more from just going with light armor, and the Elegant Studded Leather kind of gets a bit of that green and a bit of that blue from kind of the Breath of the Wild design in there. Still looks good, but again looks less Link-ish to me. It's a bit too leathery for my tastes, but it definitely will get the job done, giving you a decent chunk of armor class, a bonus to initiative rolls, advantage on stealth checks, and the shield spell once per short or long rest. Hold on, it's been a while. Short rest, yeah. So 2 times per day is not bad. But for the sake of fashion, we're going to be sticking with the Padded Armour +1 because that's what I like. Next up, for your weapon, in Act 1 you can grab Fala Aluv. This is a good dex weapon if you haven't quite leveled up your strength yet or gotten the or if you get the gloves of dexterity early, you can make this weapon quite powerful. You literally pull this from a pedestal in the Underdark, so getting at the actual way of getting it is as close to the Master Sword kind of vibe as we're going to get. It's a +1 enchanted longsword and will also give you Fala Alive Melody, allowing you to either buff your allies or debuff your enemies. But when you get to Act 3, I highly recommend swapping over to Voss's Silver Sword. This weapon gets it's a +2 longsword, one of the only ones in the game, and this weapon gains a 1d4 bonus to a damage and attack rolls against Githyanki, Aberrations, Fiends, and Elementals. That Aberrations and Fiends kind of category mix basically covers all of the quote-unquote evil entities in the game, so you have the Goblins, your Moblins, all that good stuff. And also gains Wrathful Smite for free, which isn't really on theme, but again, we're just getting it for free anyway, so it really doesn't matter. So it's a little bit of extra damage that kind of gets that kind of power up. You know how the Master Sword gets that power up when, like, you're near Ganon and his, like, most evil forces across some of the games? This is basically that. It's the closest thing you're going to get to a Master Sword thematically, but unfortunately there's nothing that really works design-wise. But I feel like for a powerful option for a sword from Act 3, this will work, and if you follow the quest line, you can get it with the Githyanki Crash, you can get this right at the start of Act 3. Next up, obtainable in Act 2 is the Shield of Scorching Reprisal. This is the closest shield design-wise to the Hylian shield with the blue, the red, the kind of metal accents, and the kind of emblem in the middle. Obviously, you can go with any shield you like. The Shield of Devotion is a bit easier to get and also gives you an extra level 1 spell slot. And in Act 3, Viconia's Walking Fortress is obviously one of the best shields ever made and still looks quite regal, even if it's not quite got that Hylian shield color scheme. It will absolutely do the job just fine. But I do quite like the Shield of Scorching Reprisal as an option to get a thematically correct Hylian shield. As for our weapon, we have the Titan String Bow. Since we have high dex and high strength with this build, we're going to get a ton of damage on our ranged attacks with this weapon. Basically, this weapon deals additional damage equal to the strength modifier and is a +1 bow, and is just going to do a ton of damage for you, so you absolutely want to pick this up. You can get it in Act 2, I believe, so it is quite powerful. And lastly, we don't have any specific accessories for this build, so use whatever you like, but I did want to point out the Unflinching Protector Amulet. Once per short rest, you can basically cause any attack for Goat that is about to hit an ally to miss automatically, basically allowing you to shield the princess from whatever harm may befall her. So yeah, I mean, I will quickly show off the camp clothing as well. If you want more of a, like, old NES style Link design, you can go with the Snugglesome green shirt to get this kind of look here, but obviously this is more of a modern interpretation, and this will still work well as pajamas. So yeah, that is our first build of the video. Now, as you can see, I have musical instrument proficiency here. This is because even though this version of Link does not use an instrument like the Ocarina of Time, it's still nice to be able to get musical instrument proficiency. And for those who don't know, if you speak to the NPC Alfira in the Emerald Grove during Act 1 and pass a couple of skill checks through her dialogue, you can actually gain musical instrument proficiency on a character for free, allowing you to play the flute or any other instrument, which felt on theme, so I wanted to pick it up here. You can find all sorts of tutorials online if you want to learn how to do it, but it's really, really simple, and you can easily stumble upon it by yourself without even needing to try. With that, let's move on to our next build. Link, can you stop? How do I make him stop? There we go. Let's move on to our next build, which is Princess Zelda. I'm just going to quickly cut and respec this character, and we'll get into it. And we're back. So with this, I felt like the reason I wanted to do Zelda as well is because, well, in reality, just making a single video that says, yep, go 12 levels of Hunter Ranger and you're done, it didn't really sit well with me. So I wanted to do Zelda as well, which admittedly isn't going to be a very interesting build multi-class wise. However, I still kind of wanted to show it off because I feel like it is a cool build overall, and I feel like being able to go on a duo adventure with Link and Zelda would be super, super cool. You know, doing what Tears of the Kingdom didn't. Still salty about that. Anyways, let's get on to the build. So, obviously we are playing a Cleric. Zelda is basically the Cleric of Hylia across the games. Wisdom is our main stat, and Wisdom is literally her whole thing. She is the bearer of the Triforce of Wisdom, so it makes complete sense to go for Cleric. But the thing is, what domain do we go with? I feel like Life, Light, and Knowledge all work, and I did initially do a concept where I went for a Life domain Cleric, because at total level 8, you would gain Divine Strike Radiant, which means that our bow damage, which we'll have here, would do additional radiant damage, essentially giving Zelda the light arrows that she's known for having throughout the entire series. However, upon speculation, like, Zelda isn't exactly a healer. She does heal in some of the games, but it's not really her main thing, so Light Domain, to be able to use that holy smiting magic, absolutely works. So we're going to be going light for this one. So starting off with our cantrips, we're going to be grabbing Resistance, Guidance, and Thaumaturgy. I would skip getting Sacred Flame for now, because we are going to get it a different way in a minute. But yeah, we're going with Light Domain, which is going to give us the Light Cantrip. We're going to get Burning Hands, which isn't really on theme, but it's still worth having. And Fairy Fire. I'm going to flavour this as Navi, doing the lock-on to an enemy, allowing you to hit them easier. That's how I'm gonna flavour that, and how I'm gonna make that make sense, so let's move on. Next up is Warding Flare. Shield yourself with Divine Light, using a reaction to impose disadvantage on an attacker, possibly causing their attack to miss. This costs nothing but your reaction and can be done as many times as you like, so pretty good, allowing her to keep herself safe. Now, as for a deity, I really don't know what to pick here. Nothing really quite aligns with Hylia, who is a female goddess of light. Mystra is kind of the closest thing I can think of, because Zelda is both a cleric and a scholar, so having a deity that kind of goes over both the religious side of things and the arcane side of things, so knowledge and wisdom, does make sense to me. As for our stats, these look really funky, so we're going to change them up. Wisdom, we definitely want at 16 for sure. It is our main spellcasting stat and something we would want to have high. Next up, I'm going to say let's grab some charisma, because I feel like Zelda will be the one who kind of talks for the group, because Link literally doesn't. We are a medium armor build, so we don't need that much dexterity, but we do want a decent amount because we are going to be using a bow as our main weapon, so having a 14 in dex is pretty good. We definitely want Constitution at a decent amount, probably about 14 as well, just so we can get that decent chunk of HP so we're not too squishy, although again, Link is going to be doing most of the frontline fighting, so if you don't mind playing a little dangerously and bumping this down to a 12, you wouldn't do too bad, but I think 14 is a happy medium. And finally, we want to grab some intelligence, because Zelda is quite smart, so while we don't exactly have stellar stats overall, we're mainly going to be using our wisdom for spellcasting, so we want to have that as high as it'll go, and just having decent stats across the board for conversation and various other aspects of the game, as well as having our dexterity at a decent score for our bow attacks, which is more of a sidearm to our magic, and our constitution to have a decent chunk of HP. Overall, this works quite well. As for our skill proficiencies, we basically have a couple of options here. History and medicine work well for Zelda, but I will be swapping out medicine for persuasion, because she is going to be the face of the group between her and Link. She will do the talking, Link will do the killing. Next up at Cleric level 2, we're going to be getting our Radiance of the Dawn class feature, which comes from our Channel Oath ability, of which we get, or Channel Divinity, my apologies, which we get 1 of at this level. And what this is going to do is allow you to summon the divine power of Hylia to smite down an enemy, dealing a ton of radiant damage. It is 2d10 plus our Cleric level, I believe. So yeah, pretty decent ability overall. It's going to do a decent chunk of damage, and you'll be able to use it more times as we level up. But I felt like it was quite on theme and worked well here. As for our spells, we have a few options here, and I'm going to recommend a few. Sanctuary comes up first, being able for Zelda to be able to use her divine defensive magic to be able to shield herself or Link, as long as they do no harm. Guiding Bolt, one of our main radiant damage kind of spells, and is going to allow Link to attack with advantage on his next attack. Next up, Bless, giving Link a bonus to all of his, both Zelda and Link, to have a bonus 1d4 to attack rolls and saving throws. Protection from evil and good is quite on theme here, allowing you to protect yourself or Link from the forces of Ganon's army. And also, while you can go for healing spells here like any cleric would, I also recommend Shield of Faith to bump yourself or Link's, most likely, armor class up by 2. Next up at Cleric level 3, we're going to be getting some level 2 spells, including our light domain spells being Flaming Sphere and Scorching Ray. Again, not really on theme for Zelda, but the overall subclass is the best fitting, so having these spells isn't too bad. And I kind of like the idea of Zelda kind of having Din's Fire. So, because in the later games, those powers did kind of shift from Link to Zelda, especially in games like Smash Bros. So actually her having fire abilities, being Din's Fire, and maybe some of her other abilities could be like Nehru's Protection, which is what something like Shield of Faith could be, and then maybe Farora's Wind if we wanted to get some maybe like movement stuff in there. Actually, this all works pretty well. I quite like this. We're also going to get some extra spells from level 2, and you have a bunch of options here. I'm obviously going to recommend Aid, because it is one of the best spells in the game. Also Enhance Ability, because it is one of the best spells in the game. And lastly, maybe, I think maybe we'll stick with Shield of Faith here, but definitely want to grab Enhance Ability and Aid, because Enhance Ability is so good and is going to be able to strengthen yourself in Link, and in many different ways. Next up at Cleric level 4, we're going to be able to get our first feat, an extra cantrip, and some more spells. Like I said, we could get Sacred Flame here, but I wanted to kind of grab a feat now, and let's see. I think we're just going to bump up our Wisdom because it is our most important stat. And again, like I said, we're going to take a quick multi-class dip in a minute, so because I actually forgot about it, and we kind of need to do it, but so let's get Produce Flame. I kind of like that. And for our prepared spells, I think I'm actually going to drop Shield of Faith, because I had a little bit of a thing here. Let's grab, oh no, we don't need to drop Shield of Faith, because we have an extra spell slot. Let's grab Prayer of Healing. One of Zelda's biggest kind of things, especially in the Breath of the Wild games, is basically how she's inexperienced. So while Zelda could probably still heal, having her only have to really focus on it and only be able to do it out of combat kind of works thematically. But overall, yeah, I feel like this is a good setup here, just getting that extra bump to our Wisdom, these spells, and this cantrip. So because I kind of forgot to do it earlier, we're going to be taking a quick multi-class dip before we get further into Cleric, because there is a couple of things I would like to grab. Now you can kind of do this any way you like, but I have kind of a specific way that I would like to do it. So we're going to actually kind of take a page out of Link's book, and we're going to grab a level or 2 of Ranger. Now, the reason I'm going with this is because Ranger is going to give us some unique things that we're not really going to get from something like Fighter, for example, or maybe even Paladin. So I did want to, but you could absolutely go with either of those options here. Fighter or Paladin would certainly work. In fact, Paladin might actually be quite fun, but you're not really going to be able to smite with a bow, so But I do want to grab the Ranger kind of levels here, and I think if Zelda and Link are traveling together, it would absolutely make sense for her to pick up some kind of tricks of the trade from him. I think he would absolutely teach her how to shoot a bow, and I feel like this is going to give us some cool things that kind of link the characters together in a nice little way. This means we are going to be getting a dose of Favoured Enemy, and so we are absolutely grabbing the Sanctified Stalker to get Sacred Flame this way. This is what I meant when I said we could get Sacred Flame another way. Next up for Natural Explorer, I think it would make sense for someone who uses Din's Fire to be resistant to it, so let's grab that here, but Ermine Tracker also works. And we're also going to be getting 2 extra spells, and we're going to be getting Religion Proficiency, which makes sense, and we're also going to be grabbing maybe Perception or Investigation, could also work. I think we already have Link for Perception, so let's get Zelda having Investigation. For the record, like I always say, take these multi-classes at any point. I meant to show them off earlier, but really you can take these at any time. It doesn't matter. But actually, probably after level 4 of Cleric would be a good time to do it, because then you already have your first feat under your belt, and by the kind of start of Act 2, which is where you'll kind of be at these levels, you will have a decent bow that you can grab, because basically because we're going Ranger here is how we're getting our bow proficiency to be able to use our bow. And so, speaking of, now that we are a level 2 Cleric, we get to pick a fighting style, meaning we are going to be grabbing Archery, giving us a +2 bonus to our ranged weapon attacks. Also, we're going to be able to learn a couple of spells, and again, if you want to go that unique bow attack route, Hail of Thorns is a good shot and would not go amiss here, especially since our Wisdom is so high. That spell save DC is going to be pretty tricky. And also, I feel like Hunter's Mark for this character would work, but something like Longstrider, if you didn't want to have that on Link, could also work. Or Goodberry, because Zelda is quite a good scavenger, maybe. You can go with whatever you like. In fact, actually, maybe even Ensnaring Strike, trapping enemies so that Link can attack them. Yeah, you know what? We'll go with that. Ensnaring Strike and Hail of Thorns. And with that, we've gotten all we need from Ranger. This isn't really a martial focus build. I wanted Zelda to be more of a caster, while Link is the martial build. However, if you wanted to go 5 levels of Ranger here, taking out some of the Cleric levels, and go for Gloomstalker, you could actually have a built-in Sheik, because that would give you Disguise Self to be able to disguise yourself as Sheik, Misty Step to be able to teleport around like a ninja, and extra attack to make you more martial focused, so you could maybe do like a dual dagger build or something. But I want to focus more on Zelda herself and sort of what she represents without Sheik, so we're going back into Cleric here, meaning we are a level 5 Cleric, allowing us to pick up level 3 spells. This means we're going to be getting Daylight, which works quite well as a kind of holy light that kind of blinds evil, specifically vampires in this case. And also Fireball for that big Din's Fire explosion. We're also going to be getting Destroy Undead, allowing our Turn Undead feature to deal radiant damage, allowing us to really keep Ganon's forces at bay while Link recovers from his 100-year nap. Dude, seriously. Even I haven't taken a sleep that long. Now we get some extra spells, and for some reason multi-classing messes up your prepared spell list, so you need to redo it here. So let's make sure we grab Sanctuary, Bless, Radiant, Guiding Bolt. We're also going to want Enhanced Ability, Aid, and Prayer of Healing. But now also we get to play with the really super fun level 3 Cleric spells, including Spirit Guardians. Absolutely one of the most powerful spells in the game, and works for Zelda here, getting these little light guardians that fly around you. Again, we could reflavor this as fairies. Also, I want to grab Revivify for Zelda. Again, kind of her whole thing is being able to kind of bring a character back from the brink, whether that would be Link, or perhaps Midna, or some other character. She's done this quite a few times over the series, so I feel like Revivify actually works here, at least in my opinion. Also, you can really take whatever you like. Remove Curse could work. Feign Death, maybe, if you wanted to kind of go with that fake damsel in distress angle. There's a ton of different things. Beacon of Hope could also work. But I think something like either like Spiritual Weapon could work, or Silence, or Calm Emotions. Or if you even wanted to go with Hold Person so that Link can attack with critical hits, you can always go for that. It's really up to you. In fact, I might go with Hold Person just for that support angle for Link, but honestly, we've got a lot of concentration spells here, so feel free to grab whatever you like. Next up at Cleric level 6, we're going to be getting our subclass feature. We're also going to be getting another Channel Divinity charge, meaning we can use our Radiance of the Dawn twice per short rest. But now we also gain improved Warding Flare, so this means that now our Warding Flare now works on teammates, meaning not only can we use our reaction to shield ourselves, but also Link. And yet we're going to be getting another spell at this level. Take whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. With Cleric level 7, we're going to be up to level 4 spells, and we're going to be getting 2 spells from our light domain. Guardian of Faith, this is going to allow Zelda to summon her Phantom Armour from Spirit Tracks, which she does as a separate entity from herself in Smash Bros., so I feel like works pretty well here, and also it's just quite a fun thematic spell that I quite like. We're also getting Wall of Fire. Again, we keep kind of stretching what it means to reflavor Din's Fire here, but I do think it still works as kind of a nice fire option. But we can also get some level 4 spells here as well, so let's grab a few. I want Banishment. It is super on theme. The amount of times Zelda has managed to temporarily banish Ganon, or whatever Demon King is ruling the day in that particular game, is mind-boggling. She's done it in the Breath of the Wild games. She's done it in Twilight Princess in some shape or form. I believe she even did it in Skyward Sword. I believe. Yeah, so being able to temporarily banish the Demon King definitely works here. God, I haven't played some of the Zelda games in a long time. I've played a lot of them, but it's been a while. Freedom of Movement also works. This doesn't require concentration and lasts until a long rest. Basically, it would make Link be able to move however he likes. They cannot be stunned. Difficult terrain does not slow them down, and they cannot be paralyzed or restrained, so it absolutely works here to be able to buff Link up. Also, Death Ward as well, being able to give Link a little bit of resistance to death, allowing him to come back again. But hopefully, this time, it won't take 100 years. I'm going to keep making that joke, because it's funny. Not really, but you get my point. Next up at Cleric level 8, we're going to be getting our subclass feature. Now, again, this is where we would have gotten Divine Strike Radiance if we had gone with Life Cleric, allowing all of our bow attacks to be light arrows, but here we actually do get potent spellcasting, meaning we add your Wisdom modifier to the damage of Cleric's cantrips, so that means our Sacred Flame and Produce Flame spells are going to be super strong. We're also getting level 5 spell slots at this point, meaning our spells are going to get even more powerful, and even though we're not taking full classes of a full spellcaster, we took enough levels of Ranger to get enough spell slots that it will push us up to level 6 by the time this build is finished, so that works. But because we've got all of this potent spellcasting nonsense, I absolutely want to have our Wisdom at 20 to be able to get the maximum amount of damage and utility out of all of our Cleric features and spells. At Cleric level 9, we're going to be getting our level 5 spells, including the 2 from our light domain. One of the spells I really wanted, Flame Strike. We are summoning the full power of the Triforce of Wisdom here to bring down Hylia's Wrath onto onto our enemies, dealing 5d6 fire and radiant damage. Super, super cool spell. One of the coolest looking and most fun spells to use in the game. In my opinion, this is a slightly more powerful version of Fireball with less range, but I kind of prefer it to Fireball overall, but we get both in this build, so who cares? We also get Destructive Wrath, allowing us to push enemies away from us, around us, dealing 5d6 thunder damage and 5d6 radiant, so two super powerful kind of divine intervention smite spells, which are super, super cool. We're also, again, like I said, going to be getting level 5 spells at this point, and I really want a couple. Spell Evil and Good, meaning that if you or an... I think this works? Yeah, it's just you. So you can cast this on yourself, and it will give you additional protection against the forces of Ganon, aberrations, elementals, fae, fiends, undead, celestials. All of them have disadvantage on attack rolls against you, but you can also break enchantments that charm, frighten, or possess allies. So basically you can basically snap Link out of anything that might be affecting him. Pretty good. Next up, you can kind of take whatever you like here. Again, it really doesn't matter, just take whatever's on theme. But something like Greater Restoration or Mass Cure Wounds wouldn't exactly be missed. Maybe at this point in Zelda's career, she has actually gotten good enough at channeling her magic, but she can do a decent chunk of healing whenever, and as such, Beacon of Hope can also work here as well. But again, take whatever you like, whatever you think is flavorful. On theme. And finally, at max level, we're going to be a Cleric 10, allowing us to get Divine Intervention and our level 6 spell slot. Divine Intervention is a once per character thing that allows you to summon the full power of your chosen deity to help you in a battle. Now, it says once per character, but actually it's once per respec, so for a little bit of gold, you can actually use this multiple times. It's going to let you do one of 4 different things. You can either you can either attack a large group of enemies with 8d10 radiant damage, I believe, which is pretty powerful. You can summon a legendary mace, which is a +3 weapon that gives you healing, which has an ability that allows you to heal a little bit of HP for you and your allies every turn with no cost to yourself. Another one is to basically gain the effects of a long rest and also revive any nearby allies, so basically your whole team can suddenly in that last moment get their second wind to finish the fight. And finally, you can also gain a bunch of camp supplies. Yeah, maybe don't do that one. But again, this is only once per character, but if you respec, you can do this multiple times. It's a little bit cheaty and gamey, but I feel like getting this as our final Cleric feature does feel quite thematic, something that definitely feels worthy of level 12. And the reason I don't really care about the level 12 of Cleric is because the final level 6 spells I don't really care about. Same for any subclass features, they don't really speak to me. So I'm quite happy to take that little bit of Ranger to get the weapon proficiency and armor proficiency. And finally, we get one final cantrip, because there's one left. Cool. And again, we can take whatever spell we like here. It really doesn't matter. And that is the build. Overall, you're gonna have a ton of utility. You're gonna have a bunch of ways to help both yourself and Link in combat, and a bunch of different damage options to be able to smite down enemies, because Zelda is no pushover. She can handle things quite well on her own, even if the Hero of Time does need to step in more than we would like. But overall, I feel like this is a pretty interesting build, and I quite like how I was able to design this. I think the hair looks quite good, and I was actually able to get quite close to the Breath of the Wild outfit. It's really hard to kind of get those kind of regal dresses that Zelda uses, but being able to grab this kind of camp clothing, which is the Splendid outfit, and I believe this is colored in... oh, pale green. It's colored in pale green, which for some reason pretty much gives that kind of decent look of her Breath of the Wild outfit. It works pretty well. So let's get into the equipment. First off, we have the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. Whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, in our case the bow, you gain Arcane Acuity for 2 turns, and what that does is you have a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell difficulty class per turn remaining, so a +2 in our case with this. Basically fire off your bow, and then your next turn your spells are going to be able to do way more for you. Also, we have the Cloak of Protection. It's just a little buff to our armor class and saving throws. Overall, pretty neat. We also have the Adamantine Scale Mail. All incoming damage is reduced by 1. When a melee attack hits you, the attacker is sent reeling, meaning they have a -1 penalty to attack rolls. You unfortunately aren't that great at stealth. You're a bit clumsy, but attacks also can't land critical hits on you. Basically, that little bit of divine protection. Next up, we also have the Reviving Hands. These can be obtained in Act 3. Oh, sorry. This is obtained in Act Act 2, this is obtained in Act 2, this is obtained in Act 1, and these are obtained in Act 3, but you can swap these out for whatever you like as you come across things. When you heal a creature against the effect of Blade Ward, basically meaning when you heal yourself or Link, you're going to be resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And when you revive a creature, they gain the effects of Death Ward, basically allowing you to kind of get a 2-in-1 package there, which is pretty good. It also gives you a free use of Revivify. And also the Disintegrating Night Walkers. I didn't really have a good final boot slot, and these are pretty good for being able to be obtained in Act 1. You cannot be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, and cannot slip on grease or ice, and you get that chic-esque teleport once per short rest with Misty Step. No specific amulet here, there's nothing I really thought fit that well, but we do have some interesting ring options. The Whispering Promise, when you heal a creature, it gains a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws for 2 turns, basically a shorter lasting version, a short version of Bless, which activates for free on heals, which is pretty good. And finally, the Shifting Corpus Ring, allowing you to cast Invisibility and Blur once each per long rest, basically getting a little bit more of that chic action. Now, let's get on to the weapons. I've decided that if you want a melee sidearm, if you don't want to just use a bow all the time, the Sword of Life Stealing kind of works here. It's basically like, if you know Zelda Twilight Princess, you know how she used kind of a rapier in that game that kind of had a design similar to this, although it was a bit longer. This is kind of the closest thing you can get that's easy. You just buy this from a vendor in Act 2. The ability to deal necrotic on a critical hit isn't exactly on theme for Zelda, and if you wanted to use a rapier, that would probably be better. If you don't care about what it looks like, the Infernal Rapier would be a really good option here. But I kind of just wanted to go with something that at least has some design kind of inspiration taken from somewhere in Zelda's history, so this kind of works. Now, for our bows, in Act 2, you can use the Darkfire Shortbow, which is going to give you resistance to fire and cold damage. It's a +2 bow and can allow you to cast haste once per long rest on either yourself or Link. Pretty good. But, of course, Zelda's biggest weapon throughout the series is the Bow of Light, and so we have that here. If it would like to actually appear, thank you very much. This is the Gaunter Mail. It is attained in Act 3 for beating a pretty tricky boss, but nothing that's insurmountable. On a hit, you possibly inflict Guiding Bolt, so the same, you just get to the next attack roll has advantage. The bow literally glows, giving you a decent amount of light. It's a +3 bow, and it will allow you to cast Celestial Haste, meaning you can give yourself hastened for 5 turns, but it can't be cast on an ally, but the upside is that you suffer no negative effects when it runs out. And you also gain a bonus attack called the Bolt of Celestial Light, allowing you to do extra radiant damage, and after using this feature, ranged weapon attacks made by the Gaunter Mail deal an additional radiant damage. This is how we can get the light arrows without getting a class feature. So yeah, this thing is literally the Bow of Light. Freaking look at it. It's awesome. Also, if you kind of wanted Zelda's like kind of goddess robes, you can go with this, which I think looks pretty good. But I want kind of adventurer robes, so yeah. That is the Elegant robe, which is obtained in Act 3. So yeah, those are the builds. Now, overall, I feel like these are 2 pretty fun options. They are on theme, they are easy to build, and I feel like if you are a fan of the Legend of Zelda series and like you're just getting into D&D and Baldur's Gate for the first time, and if you have maybe even a co-op buddy you can play with, this really does work out as a cool little duo option. Or if you wanted to play this solo, you can do the kind of multiplayer trick if you're on PC, or you can redesign a hireling to kind of get that companion. But yeah, I mean, overall, I feel like these builds are going to be super fun to play, they're super on theme, and they're just you are going to feel like you are playing kind of a Zelda-esque game while running these builds. So, I've got the combat footage playing in the background now, I do believe, so I do need to kind of get into something here. As I said at the start of this video, you may have been feeling a certain sense of deja vu. That is because this is not my first time doing this video. Yesterday, I uploaded a different version of this video that used all the same equipment, however, I built the character slightly differently. Zelda was still a Cleric 10 Ranger 2, but she was a Life Cleric in that video, which some people said, it should really be light, which is fair enough. However, now, I initially built Link as a Paladin, and I understand that that is a weird choice, but I did it for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to really kind of create a Link that uses the Master Sword, which in that case, getting a lot of radiant damage and getting powerful strikes and such like that, felt right to me. but also getting the auras that allow us to not be frightened, getting that holy power of courage from the Triforce. That all made sense to me, but I understand that if you actually wanted to play Link with his Zelda game kit from a gameplay perspective, Hunter is better, and I agree that this build in the end is much more on theme and works out better. I don't mind the criticism. However, and I need to get real about this, treating others, not myself, other people in the comments who commented saying that they liked the build, and then trashing them for it and attacking them for it is not acceptable. Now, I understand that this original video was only up a couple of hours before I pulled it down, and in that short amount of time, and it was only had a couple of hundred views, there were a ton of comments that were either making fair points and constructive criticism, which is why this video exists, but there were also some that clearly just watched the first couple of minutes, left a rather nasty comment, and then left. Those are whatever, I don't care. But when there are people saying, oh, actually, I quite liked this build, I quite like this build and I think it's quite cool, or I really want to play this with a friend, and then you get people in the replies to those comments saying, really, you want to use this trash, and blah, 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 and, you know, that is not cool. I pulled that video not because I was getting criticism. I have changed and retitled and updated builds in the past, look at my old Virgil build, because of criticism, and a lot of the healthy constructive criticism and discussions we've been having in the comments of these videos have led to this channel's growth overall, such as me taking the whole game into account instead of just using endgame gear, going through certain things, doing combat showcases, getting the lore right on my lore builds for my deity videos. Those were all extremely amazing. So when I see people going and harassing other people in the comments of these videos, that is not something I want. And I knew the video had only been up for a couple of hours, but I knew that the comment section was going to become a dumpster fire, and I do not tolerate or want to foster that kind of community. Now, the people I saw that were making these comments were not regular viewers of the channel. The people who comment and like and whatever on these videos, I recognize a lot of your profile pictures and names and such, so I know that the regular viewers of this channel are good people that would not do this. However, because I had made a Legend of Zelda build, and I had brought in another fan base, that is where the issue came from. So if you are coming here and you've not seen many Baldur's Gate 3 videos and you're not familiar with, you know, D&D and Baldur's Gate and all that, please understand that you need to take a little bit of a step back if you don't think things are right. Constructive criticism is welcome, but do not go after other people in the comments because of the things they say. We have had civil disagreements and interesting discussions in these comment sections before that have led to really interesting results and overall, like I said, channel growth. But if I see people in the comments doing this sort of thing and harassing others, I will be shadow banning you. It is a one-click option that makes it so no matter how much you scream into the void, your comments will never be seen on this channel again. Okay? Now that that's out of the way, I'm really sorry. I hate getting real, but I wanted to make my stance absolutely clear that I do not tolerate the harassment of others, especially on this channel. I just had to get that clear. But with that, we're moving on to my next kind of video section type thing. And again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Obviously a bit of a weird one, deleting and re-uploading a video, but I hope it works out in the end. But again, my next video, since we're at the weekend now, it is going to be my next Halloween build, of which I'm kind of toying around with the idea of either doing a build based on the Xenomorph from Alien, which is going to be like an acid build, or a kind of witch build that might be a mix between like Warlock and Wizard, which I think could actually be quite fun. So let me know your thoughts on that if you feel like there's one way I could go with it. But overall, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, sorry for being a bit of a downer towards the end, but I just had to get that off my chest. And again, if you feel like I could have done something different in this video, perhaps maybe going Swordsbard for Link to kind of make an Ocarina of Time variant, please, I would love to hear your constructive suggestions and also build ideas, build requests, build suggestions in the video comment section. But please do not get into like scraps with others, basically. Be kind to each other. That is all I'm asking. Alright, I'm going to leave it there, and I will see you all next time.